All right. Hello and welcome to my analysis and interpretation of the Da Vinci Code by Dan Brown, which was published in 2003 and is part of a book series where the main character is Robert Langdon. The novel is a fictional thriller. The narrator is the third person, anonymous, omniscient narrator because the narrator speaks from the point of view of several characters describing what they see and hear. So, the entire novel is told in just one day. The two protagonists, Robert Langdon and Sophie Neveu, are on the run from the judicial police in France and ends up traveling a lot. First from the Louvre Museum in Paris to Late Teabing's luxurious house in Versailles, then flying all the way to the Temple Church and Westminster Abbey in London, and finally, Sophie returns to her remaining family members in Roslin, Scotland. And the novel is written in a modern society with smart cars, advanced technical banks, airplanes, cell phones, etc. So I have chosen to characterize Robert Langdon and Sir Late Teabing. So Robert is an American professor of religious symbology from Harvard University and is the protagonist of the Da Vinci Code with French cryptologist Sophie Neveu, as he is the main character in the three other Dan Brown books. We don't get to know everything about his past, though it is mentioned that Mr. Langdon has a problem with claustrophobia, as he's about to walk into an elevator at the Louvre in France with Bisou Fachier, who is the French judicial police commander in France, on page 24. As a boy, Langdon had fallen down an abandoned wood shaft and almost died treading water in the narrow space for hours before being rescued. Since then, he had suffered a haunting phobia of enclosed spaces: elevators, subways, squash courts. So, other than being claustrophobic, Langdon is very heroic and good-minded, which makes him the protagonist of the story. In the beginning, he refuses to help Sophie with her grandfather's mystery, but has no other choice as Bisou Fachier thinks he killed Jacques Sonnier. He then helps her and later even protects her from danger when both of them are at gunpoint with the antagonist, Late Teabing, on page 409. Robert Langdon had given up trying to get his bearings. Despite the torrent of questions running through his mind, he knew only one thing mattered now: getting Sophie out of there, alive. All the guilt Langdon had mistakenly felt earlier for involving Teabing had now been transferred to Sophie. So just the fact that he's willing to risk his own life to save Sophie when they're at the gunpoint, that's pretty heroic. So in my opinion, Robert Langdon is a round and dynamic character as he develops progressively as a character throughout the novel, from having doubts about Sophie to suddenly wanting to save her life. Alright, so Sir Late Teabing is a rich, crippled British knight who is described on page 228 as having bushy red hair and jovial hazel eyes that seemed to twinkle as he spoke. He's also super knowledgeable, especially on like one specific subject, the Holy Grail. Langdon explains to Sophie on page 216 that Teabing's life passion is the Grail, and later in the novel, Teabing himself says that learning the truth has become his life's love. Though it is soon revealed that Teabing is not so innocent. He is, in fact, the teacher who is the antagonist of the novel, an evil mastermind who had been manipulating an albino monk named Silas to kill Jaco and three other members of the Pride of Sign to come closer to where the Holy Grail lies. So I would consider Teabing as being static but a round character, as his intention of betraying Robert and Sophie was there from the moment they stepped into his home, but his personality and motives are still featured throughout the novel. So there is a wide range of symbolism in the Da Vinci Code, but I've chosen to talk about the Holy Grail. So from a normal point of view, you would believe that the Grail is a grail filled with holy water, which will bring you eternal life. But according to the Da Vinci Code, it is something much bigger when Sophie mentions on page 253, the Holy Grail is Mary Magdalene, the mother of the royal bloodline of Jesus Christ. So, according to the Da Vinci Code, Jesus Christ was married to Mary Magdalene, and together they had a child named Sarah, which is also mentioned later in the book. The church in the novel can't let this information out. That's the reason why they're after the prior sign, and therefore also Langdon and Sophie. They have to destroy any information that exists of the bloodline of Jesus and Mary, so people's faith won't perish. So why is the novel called the Da Vinci Code? Well, I believe it's called that because it refers to the many clues about the Grail throughout the centuries in the novel. While many have secretly passed on the truth of Jesus and Mary Magdalene, Leonardo da Vinci is portrayed as an artist who made it his focus to transmit the truth through his art. He did that through his famous painting, The Last Supper, when Langdon and Teabing points out that the gap between Mary and Jesus represents the chalice, which ultimately symbolizes a woman's womb, in which they interpret that into Jesus being a father and having a child with Mary. So one of the many themes in the Da Vinci Code could be the conflict between faith and genuine knowledge. According to the Da Vinci Code, the church has enforced ignorance about the existence of the descendants of Jesus. Although Langdon says that perhaps the secret of the Grail should be preserved in order to allow people to keep their faith, and the people who truly believe in God will be able to accept the idea that the Bible is full of metaphors and not literal transcripts of the truth. Like when Langdon is on the plane talking to Sophie about whether she should publish the information or not, on page 342. The Bible represents a fundamental guidepost for millions of people on the planet. In much the same way the Quran, Torah, and Pali Canon offer guidance to people of other religions. If you and I would dig up documentation that contradicted the holy stories of Islamic belief, Judaic belief, Buddhist belief, pagan belief, should we do that? Should we wave a flag and tell the Buddhists that we have proof that Buddha did not come from a lotus blossom, or that Jesus was not born of a literal virgin birth? Those who truly understand their faiths understand the stories are metaphorical. So what Langdon believes is that people's faith in other words can withstand the truth. And he supports that also by saying on page 342, religious allegory has become a part of the fabric of reality. And living in that reality helps millions of people cope and be better people. So basically, Langdon is telling Sophie and the reader that there's no reason to destroy something that might not be historical, right and accurate, but helps people to be better people. That's also maybe why, or one of the reasons why the prior sign hasn't published the information about Mary and Jesus and the truth behind them in the Da Vinci Code. Thanks for listening.